Everyone, today I'm going to compare the education system of Finland and the United States. Finland's system is built around three core ideas: equality, trust in teachers, and student well-being. Compared to this, Finland uses far fewer standardized tests and gives every student equal access to a quality education, regardless of their background, by looking at the history, politics, and the economics behind both systems. We can really see how a country was shaped the kind of education it builds. So, Finland education system didn't just appear of nowhere. After the Finnish Civil War ended in 1980s, it became clear that working class people had almost no access to education. That led to founding of Workers' Educational Association in 1990s. Under historian Vaino Vionano, by 1921, Finland passes a law making elementary education mandatory, but reformers argued that it wasn't enough. The real turning point came decided later, in 1960s, when Finland completely overhauled its national school system. And that's really the foundation of what we see today. Even his higher education keep evolving, like the 2008 merger that created Autonomous University. Culturally, Finnish education centers around a concept called civistus. It doesn't really translate into English, but it's similar to the German idea of building. It's not just about knowledge, it's about personal growth, characters, and wisdom. Reading was treated as essential to the homosexual, saying that a home without books was a sign of poverty, intellectually speaking. And one real interesting tradition is the study circle, borrowed from Sweden, a way of learning together, a cycle, with no single authority figure. That idea of learning collectivity and demonstrativity is still back in Finnish culture today. Politically, Finland gives school a huge amount of freedom. There are no government rules on class size, and school manage their own budgets and staffing. One of the biggest shifts happened in the early 1990s, when Finland completely abolished school inspections. Instead of controlling school from the top down, the government shifted to trust teachers, professionals' judgment. This is all built on that 1921 compulsory education law we talking about here, on, and on funding structures that started back in 1920s to support workers' education. Economically, Finland is actually one of the most efficient education systems in the world. A study analyzed 30 OECD countries found that Finland gets the best education outcomes per dollar spent, not because it spent the most, but because it spent smart. The research found only two things really moved to the needle: teacher wage and class size. So it's not really about how much money you throw at the system, it's all about how you use it. Now let's shift to the United States. American higher education really exploded after World War II, largely because of the GBO. In the US, the first country in the world to reach mass participation in college. But not everyone agreed it's a perfect system. In the 1980s, sociologist Burton Clark argued that community colleges, while working they offered equal opportunity, actually ended up lowering some students' academic ambitions. The enrollment kept climbing anyway, reaching 80% by the early 90s, with another spike after the 2008 recession. Culturally, American education is built around individualism, personal achievements, competition, and self-expression. Failure is really seen as a personal learning experience, not a group one, which is actually really different from more collectivism culture like Japan, where mistakes are treated as something the whole class learns from together. You can see the religion mindset play out in things like project-based learning and STEAM programs, where students are encouraged to explore and experiment on their own. Politically, US education leans heavily on standardized testing to measure success, but critics argue this actually discourages creativity and conventional thinking. Students end up chasing the right answer instead of exploring ideas. There have been efforts to bring emotion and social learning into school too, though groups like Castle, but with testing taking up so much space in the curriculum, that kind of programming is inconsistent from state to state. Economically, the US has a much higher GDP per capita than most countries, but its education funding is supposedly decentralized. Most of the responsibility falls on individual states. Not the federal government, but more than half of the US colleges are actually private institutions, which shows just how market driven the system is. And community college play a huge role too. They enroll over 40% of undergraduates, offering a cheaper, more open path into higher education. So, where do things stand today? In Finland, one of the biggest recent debates is smartphone ban. As of August 2025, phones are restricted during lessons nationwide. A teacher union surveys found that 70% of the teachers believed phones were hurting students' concentration, so this was a direct response to that. Meanwhile, in the United States, there are ongoing debates about standardized tests. Starting in 2025, the ICT actually became shorter and more flexible, which reflects a bigger national conversation about whatever higher stakes testing is even the right way to measure success anymore. So, to wrap up, Finland education systems work because it's prioritizing equality, trust in teachers, and student well-being instead of constant testing. The US learns much more heavily on testing and school choice, while Finland gives every student the same starting point regardless of background. Looking at both countries' history and economy, it really shows that a country's success in education isn't random. It comes from whatever that society actually chose to value. Finland model might not work anywhere, but there is still a lot of the US could learn from it. So guys, thank you for watching and have a good day.